Serious, Redditors who have been to therapy, what is the differences between going to a therapist and talking it out with someone you really trust? My therapist knows the questions to ask to direct my thoughts in a productive direction. She gives me homework, exercises to practice tracking my feelings back to the thoughts that generated them, for example. She knows how to keep my thoughts focused on progress, instead of letting me wander off in some random direction. There's a hell of a lot more to therapy than just talking it out. Edit, I changed right direction to productive direction, didn't realize the unwanted implications of there being a right or a wrong way to think, my apologies. Do you find it a lot more helpful than just talking to a friend about it? Talking to friends is messy. There is history there. You have feelings tied up in each other, expectations, fears, etc. Therapists are objective, unbiased, and goal-oriented. Way different. And no matter how close you are, there will always be at least a little part of you that fears being judged by your friends. You can drop that part entirely with a professional. My wife is a therapist. She's like a conversation ninja. Therapists know what to say, when to say it, and how to say it to get you the most benefit. So the reason I ask is because I feel like my wife needs one. She has an eating disorder, PTSD, anxiety, and depression. She refuses to go to a therapist because she feels she can get the same effect just talking to me about it. I want to know if that's true and if it's worth investing in one. Your wife is my wife? Seriously though. Therapy and medicine has helped my wife a lot, and I bet it would help yours too. I was also her fake therapist for years before she finally started going. It weighs far too heavy on you. Trust me, man. I'm getting to my breaking point. When you talk to a friend, their personal feelings get involved. My therapist is only concerned with my own feelings, we had no personal relationship beforehand. Also, my therapist said that in every other relationship outside of therapy, every person wants something out of the other person. This does not occur in the therapy relationship, and it can be a wholly healing, supporting, unique relationship that cannot be replicated simply because your therapist doesn't want anything from you. Besides money, I guess, haha. But even in therapy, if someone is defensive about why we pay them, it can still be used in a therapeutic way. Friends are awesome to talk to, but therapists have spent years studying how brains and mental health works. They will have insights that are beyond what friends can tell you. Exactly. While it's easier for us to talk to friends in the beginning, they don't know what is the best thing to say at times. But while it's tough to talk to a therapist in the beginning, tough to open up to a stranger, but it gets easier and they know exactly how to comfort us. Therapists are also supposed to be impartial. Friends either want what's best for you or themselves, so their opinion is usually pretty biased, even if they don't know it. There is a world of difference, even assuming the same understanding. My dad's a shrink, so this answer may be a bit biased. I would say just talking to pals is a bit like using WebMD instead of going to a doctor. You might get the right answers and some peace of mind, but the actual nuances of what you are dealing with will likely be lost without the eye of a professional. And sometimes those nuances are the difference between getting useful advice and destructive advice. I saw a therapist who used cognitive behavior therapy to treat depression. It wasn't just talking it out, though there was some of that. More importantly, they taught me how to recognize what specific negative thoughts are behind negative emotions, and dig down even deeper to identify the negative self-beliefs behind those thoughts. Then, to be able to recognize in the moment when and have negative thoughts, evaluate how accurate they are, and reframe them in a more accurate, positive light, to prevent a downward spiral of rumination and negative self-talk. It was basically like going to see a personal trainer, but for my mind. Specific exercises, homework, etc., and it really was like exercise. The more you engage in certain thought patterns, the more your brain learns to engage in those patterns, and the easier it gets. This is true both positively and negatively. At first I really had to pay attention to what was going on in my head, and try really hard to reframe things more positively, but it got easier and more automatic as time went on. Obviously, talking about your problems with people close to you is important, and therapy wasn't a replacement for that. But I also don't think just talking to my friends and family would have helped me with the deeper issues at all, or even realize what the deeper issues were. Yes. CBT changed my life. I initially went to a talk it out type therapist, and it wasn't working for me, so I went to a new one who introduced me to CBT. The exercises were so helpful and really useful in identifying my incorrect thinking patterns and consciously dispelling irrational thoughts. Now that the CBT has been completed, we do meet in a more talk it out format, but during those first 4 months of CBT I saw such a huge difference. Just started DBT, which is a more specific version of CBT. I had my first session and it's already way easier than the talk it out therapist I had before. 1010 recommend. I went through 2 years of DBT and my God was it helpful. You learn so much that just sticks with you for life if you do the skills every day or on an as needed basis. Therapists are better at knowing what you really need long term and not just what will make you feel better for the rest of the day. For example, when I started with my therapist, I really needed someone to make me upset so that I'd be forced to work through my experiences. I'm bad at talking about terrible shit. I'll make jokes, change subject, literally anything so long as I don't have to get anywhere near the root event. But my therapist wouldn't let me. If I joked or changed subject, she just kept going undeterred until I was crying and pissed. Then she helped me climb back out of the hole in a healthy way. Nobody who loves me could have done that. They'd have backed out when I started getting upset instead of continuing to push. Plus, they're not as biased. They won't agree with you just because they like you. If you say something totally wild, they'll call you out. Other people may need other things from therapists, but I need someone to call out my flaws and force me to confront things I avoid. Privacy and objective observations. If you grow to trust your therapist, you absolutely know you can talk about anything without having to worry about the therapist's triggers. Your trusted friend may be able to keep their mouth shut, but won't have the same level of training to help quite as much. I talk with my son on a regular basis and pretty much tell him the same thing his therapist does. But he tells his therapist much more than he can tell me. He also knows that his therapist doesn't have any skin in the game, so he can trust the responses. Vice versa, I used to be a therapist. When I have skin in the game, I'm a lot worse at giving advice. When I'm detached, I can be objective. I can't give the same level of advice to friends as I can give to clients. My mother is a therapist and this is what she always says. If she finds herself feeling angry or something with a patient, she has to fix it in the next couple of weeks or recommend a transfer to other therapist. Friends are incentivized to make you happy. Therapists are incentivized to make you healthy. I used to get upset with my therapist for not being on my side because I didn't like what I was hearing. I thought she was supposed to have my back by agreeing with me, telling me all the reasons I was right and my opposition was wrong, whatever it was, but that's the kind of support your friends are there for. Your doctor isn't your cheerleader. At the end of every session, I would realize she was making observations that were tough on me and challenging me for my benefit. She'd be doing me a great disservice if she treated me like just another friend-eyes man. My therapist says she refuses to help friends in the same way because it's impossible for both her to be objective, and for the advice to sound objective. It's also too draining to be a friend and to be responsible for their issues. My last therapist said the same thing. The difference is a therapist really is someone you feel like you can say anything to, and they won't judge you. You may think a trusted friend is the same way. But it's different when they're legally obligated to never disclose what you say. It's just a different feeling. I can't recommend therapy enough. Something that really stuck with me about therapy was in the last season of The Office, Us, when Toby says in regards to couples therapy, "You're not there to talk to the therapist, you're there to talk to each other." When you go to talk to a therapist, you're really there to talk to yourself, if that makes any sense. The therapist is really just a guide to help you figure out your own problems and work through them, with more advice as to how to work things out on your own. When you talk to a trusted friend, it's more personal. Hopefully, they establish themselves as a resource, as opposed to a therapist, who helps you establish yourself as a resource. Talking to a therapist removes bias. They're also legally sworn to secrecy, so it's better to talk it out with a professional who can help you without worrying that another friend will find out. I did 2 years of EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, in therapy with the Virginia. My counselor had a master's in social work and had been a therapist for 30 years. His understanding of neurochemistry and the way a human brain works was far beyond the layman. We were able to retrace, dissect, and process much of the trauma that caused me to develop severe general anxiety and panic attacks. The EMDR literally unearthed memories I had forgotten from the recesses of my brain. The primary trauma was so encapsulated in memories that conventional CBT or exposure therapy wouldn't have allowed me to move forward. My therapist and his expertise changed my life. Speaking to friends just made me feel nice and less alone in my struggle.